William Reeves was a writer and poet who wrote this poem that was published in 1971 and the only book that he ever had published. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, but just enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a snooze in the sunshine. I don't want enough God to make me love a person of color or pick beats with a migrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want warmth of the womb, not a new birth. I want a pound of the eternal in a paper sack. I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Wilbur Reeves, 1971. Maybe today we would say it's inflation, it's $20 worth of God. But you get the picture of what the point is here. He wants to buy enough God just to feel good about himself, but not pressured into the kind of service that is really required by a believer in God. $3 worth of God for Reeves. It's comfortable, it's comforting, but that's about it. Some say the reason people want $3 worth of God is because of the enemy inside each of us. Who is the enemy inside each of us that commands so much attention? Who's the enemy that I battle with constantly? Who is the enemy that when confronted gets strong and boastful, loud and controlled? The enemy inside each of us is called self. You know him or her, right? Self just wants $3 worth of God. I want enough to help me escape the fire of eternity and keep me comfortable. I don't want enough to make me nervous where I have to deal with my prejudices. I mean, not enough to rub shoulders with those I'm uncomfortable with. I want $3 worth of God, please. Sadly, we will never be rid of self. Martin Luther called self the greatest of all popes. Paul called self the old man. Try as we will to get rid of him, we never will. We will cure him, or we will hate him. We'll find ourselves attacking him and exalting him, even pleasing him, fostering him, protecting him. That's the Christian life, isn't it? The ups and downs, but self always pulling us back. Have you felt him? Have you felt the old man? Have you felt the greatest of all popes? When he's yelling, calling at you, satisfy me, satisfy me. This is the disease of selfishness. Know this, self doesn't want to be exposed, but self hears everything. After all, today he has sung hymns and prayed prayers, but he doesn't want to get too serious about it. We can place all the blame back into the Garden of Eden, where God created two human beings in a beautiful relationship. They loved and cared for one another, and then they experienced a decision where they were called on, and left unguarded, the old man, the greatest of all popes, took over. This couple was completely naked, and they were lacking in the self-consciousness, but were completely conscious of each other. This is how they could be naked and non-defensive, unguarded with one another, and in this extraordinary relationship until sin entered the picture. And when sin entered the picture, in the form of self, not only did they lose their standing with God, but they lost their standing with each other, and we will never experience what they had prior to sin this side of eternity. The story moves forward. Those two in sin gave birth to sinners, who gave birth to more sinners, all of them learning how to manipulate and intimidate and opting out for their own interest. We decided after sin that we would call our own shots. Time kept moving, and God decided it was time for Him to come onto the scene. And so He came on the scene in the form of His Son, who was born, and He was like not ever before or since. We have never had anybody like Jesus after Him. He didn't teach or operate like any rabbi ever to that point, and not one today. He walked the shores of Galilee. He found 12 people to follow Him, and those that followed Him found something in Him that was completely different than anybody else that they had met. They found Him to be completely unselfish. Of course, there were other reasons too. Jesus decided He could put His life into them. He could disciple them so that they could carry the message on after He was gone. And after they had spent time with Him, they felt like, this will give me charter membership into heaven. And then we find the story in Mark chapter 10. James and John come to Jesus and ask Him, "Teacher, we want you to do whatever we ask you to do." Now, you may say, how would they do that? Have you ever done that? Jesus, just grant me this. Jesus, if you just do this for me, I will. If you get me out of this problem, I will. Ever been there? If you just do this for me, I'm one of your inner circle. I come to church. I do a lot of things. Is it surprising that James and John would ask that question? Have we asked that today? Grant that we may sit at your right and your left. Now, we're willing to wait. We're willing to wait until the appropriate time. In fact, we want to sit in the right and left because we think you ought to be in the middle. How about that? We are so good, we'll just be on the right and left. You can be in the middle. Yeah. My mother would really appreciate it. She would think, the boys left and they followed, and they're going to get a good position. Good promotion. The dad's going to appreciate it because we left the family fishing business. We just up and left. I think he would really appreciate you putting us on your right and left. Isn't that what they were thinking? Isn't sometimes that what we think? What consideration are we going to get for all that we're doing here? Come on, Lord, can't you put me at your right or your left? We've been loyal. Does it sound familiar? Do we ever have an inflated thought of ourselves? And then we go to 41. When the 10 heard this, they were happy. They were pretty darn mad. Indignant is what the NIV. I think it's worse than that. I think they were pretty ticked off. And does Jesus take them away and teach them? No. He does it in public, sort of in a huddle, maybe like you would consider a family meeting in public. Hey, come here, boys. We got to talk. And He tells them what it's like where they live. Rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. And their great men exercise authority over them. Isn't that right, guys? Yes. Yes, Jesus, that's right. The Romans and Jews operate in this manner. Haven't you seen that? Yes. Yes, you've seen that. Society is made up that way. Isn't that right? Yes. You have military commanders, military sergeants, military privates, proconsuls, governors, emperors, delegates, and emperors all over you. Isn't that the system? Yes. And then what's it say in 43? Jesus says, "Not so with you." This is how society operates. This is how they lord their authority over them. But not so with you. Now, Methodists, this is where you ought to have your Bible out. This is where you ought to be underlining. This is where you ought to be highlighting. But this is the kind of stuff you can use in your witness. Not so with you. Instead of the way they operate, Instead, whoever wants to become great must be your servant. We don't work through intimidation and fear. We work through love. That's who we are. Leonard Bernstein, you know Leonard Bernstein, the great composer? He was asked, what's the most difficult instrument to play? Know what he said? Second fiddle. I can get plenty of people to play first violin, first flute, first French horn, but find me somebody that will play second violin and second flute and second French horn with great enthusiasm, and I'll show you a great orchestra, because that's an orchestra that has harmony. Whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. And then, maybe the greatest word in that passage comes in verse 45. This is where you would highlight and circle. 45. For, and the word is even. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Not just the disciples, not just us, but even the Son of Man did come to be served. The Son of Man came to serve. Well, what did people think about that in those days? So we have to go over then to John chapter 7. It says, finally the temple guards went back to the chief priests and Pharisees, who asked them, why didn't you bring Jesus in? And the guards said to the Pharisees, no one ever spoke the way this man does. No one ever talked like this. Jesus made enemies, and so they plotted to kill him because he spoke like no other. William Booth was the leader and founder of the Salvation Army. He was to speak at a convention in the Midwest when they brought all the leaders of the Salvation Army together, and he was to be the keynote speaker. There were a lot of people there, but he got sick, really sick, couldn't attend, so he sent a telegram. He said, I'll send you my message in telegram, you can read it. He came to the night, the telegram comes, and they read the telegram to the audience of hundreds of Salvation Army leaders. It has one word on it. William Booth's speech that night was, others. All it said, others. So what is your word today? What is the amount of God you're looking for today? Just $3 worth of God, please? Just enough of warm milk, just a little sunshine. Not enough to tackle my prejudices. Not enough to have me serve my fellow man. Just $3. J.B. Phillips wrote, when God was man, in part of that book he rewrote the Beatitudes. He wrote it this way, happy are the pushers and shovers, for they will get on in the world. Happy are the hard-boiled, for they will never let life hurt them. Happy are those who complain, for they will get their own way. Happy are the blasé, for they never worry over their sins. Happy are the slave drivers, for they get their results. Happy are the knowledgeable men of the world, for they know their way around. Happy are the troublemakers, for they make people notice things. Happy are the humble, for they already belong to the kingdom of heaven. Happy are those who know what sorrow means, for they will be given comfort and courage. Happy are those who claim nothing, for the whole earth will belong to them. Happy are those who are hungry and thirsty for righteousness, for they will be fully satisfied. Happy are the kind and the pure, for they shall see God. $3 worth of God, not for servants. Not for servants. And this is a difficult teaching. It's a difficult preaching. It's hard to grasp. It's hard to accomplish that I am here to serve. I'm here for others. I'm here to help all those in need. I'm here to help my fellow man. Here to help my fellow woman. I'm here to help and always serve. I'm going to give you 30 seconds on the new district superintendent. She is a breath of fresh air to the Methodist Church. We are very, very fortunate if my first and second impression are anywhere close to correct. Praise God she's not a stuffy white guy. Because it's about time that the Methodist Church starts to slide just a bit to where society has moved. And change is uncomfortable. We like the comfortable. This isn't the place for comfortable. If you've come to be comfortable, it's not the way God has it ordained. And it doesn't mean we need to change our theology and we need to adopt things that aren't biblical. That's not what change means. Change means we need to embrace those that are not like us, that have less than us, that need our help, no matter who, what, or where they are. And I think she is the kind of person that sees that, has been part of that, embraces that, and practices that. So you will get to meet her on the 15th, if not before, when she has church conference here. I hope you greet her with all the love and affection that you have greeted me, because she could be marvelous for this district and marvelous for this church. And let me let you know a little secret. She's already been here, because I was able to meet her twice last week. And so when I told her about the church with the red doors, she happened to be driving by and she pulled in and was all over the pumpkin patch. And our tour guide, Miss Kayla Jackson, gave her a tour. So Dr. Lewis, Dr. Candace Lewis is her name. She goes by Candace, but she can call her Dr. Lewis, I'm sure she's not. Will be good for us and good for the Methodist Church. So where I'm going with that is, servanthood is going to be talked about the next 8 weeks. Servanthood is not always comfortable, and it's not always pretty, and it's not always clean. And it's not always rewarding when you're in the middle of it. But it's scriptural. And so you can look at these sermons that will talk about servanthood. And we're going to find that servants are known for 3 things. They give, they forgive, and they forget. And so I hope you're here for as many of the 8 weeks or all of them you can be, because I believe with my heart there's 2 things that will grow our community and will grow the Christian community. And that is, if we become missional servants. And we do a lot of wonderful things here as missional servants, but we need to continue to embrace it and add more missional servants to it, because I really believe if we do that, it could change our lifestyle, our demeanor, maybe even our relationship with the greatest servant of all, Jesus Christ. So I invite you to embrace this series on servanthood. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Lord, we thank you for this time where we can embrace servanthood. We ask that you would touch this community of faith, that you would continue to help us to grow in a way that would be more missional, that would be more serving, that we would attract more servants, that they would push us to continue to be bold in our faith, to go to places that a couple of years ago we wouldn't even have thought about. And now we're in the middle of it. Lord, continue to place your hand here. We so love your blessing. So we so call on you for your direction and your guidance in our life, in our ministry, and in the ministry here in this community of faith at Sylvan. Amen.